Hello, and welcome to The Fool and the Philosopher.
Philosopher and the Fool.
Oh yeah, about government?
We have a several month-long argument now to continue, and the argument is predisposed on something I don't even agree with.
Yeah.
So anyways, give your statement for blood and soil.
Right.
And
So you're this huge believer that people should be slaves to the government, right?
yes.
And I, on the other hand, think that the government is the spirit of the land wrought through the people.
So you're a hippie.
Hippie fascist. So I was thinking the way that we could potentially... I think what you were saying before, like, people need to sacrifice to the government, right? And I think what you're saying, from a more human-centric point of view rather than individual versus institutional perspective, is something along the lines of, because you said democracy is inherently flawed, right? Like, you seem to be suggesting that democracy doesn't work. And so I was thinking about that, and I was wondering, do you mean that the ends are wrong or the means are wrong? And we talked about, like, well, you know, we've had these positive results and it's been going for 200 years and it seems to be working, but I think you were more concerned with the means of democracy. So my thought with democracy was, imagine there's some guy over there, right? And he tells you what to do. Why is he telling you what to do? Like, you know, you're about to eat an apple. He slaps out of your hand. He's like, you can't eat apples. You're like, well, what? Who are you to say I can't eat apples, right? And so that's the government who's telling you what to do. And so I think what you were getting at was, like, the guy comes up to me and slaps the apple out of my hand, and he's like, hey, you can't eat that. I'm like, what? Well, who are you? And it's like, I'm the guy that saved your life because I'm a soldier on the front lines. You're like, yes, you are. And you salute him. And
Nope.
no?
Nope.
No? So what's the problem? Okay, so is democracy wrong in its means or its ends?
What are the means of democracy?
People going and voting, power to the people. So
And what are the ends?
the ends are what you see in democratic countries like the United States, Canada, the UK, etc.
All right. Well, I'm going to say both, but we're going to put a cap in that. We're going to go back to my original argument.
Okay.
The thing that is wrong is still both, but for different reasons. So, my argument was definitely predicated on, is it Isaac Asimov's?
Heinlein?
Sorry, Heinlein, not Isaac. Different sci-fi. Heinlein's Starship Trooper.
But that's not a criticism of democracy, right? That's the supposed solution to the problem of democracy.
Yes, and that's what I was getting at. Was the solution?
Yeah, but I want to talk about, like, what's wrong with democracy.
So what
Because I don't understand that still.
Okay, what is wrong? It's explained at the very beginning of Starship Troopers, where Rico's getting taught by the teacher, which is something that is given for free has no value. And that is he explains the predication of his philosophy at the very beginning of what's wrong with democracy.
Okay, I haven't seen the movie or read the book, so...
Okay. Well, that is the explanation.
Okay, so the explanation is something that is given for free has no value.
Yes.
That sounds like a platitude, right? Like, I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's like, what does that mean?
So, I was talking about how happy I was with buying a bathtub.
Yeah.
So, I live in a place where 50% of the time I have access to a bathtub. I don't ever use it. I use my own shower, which is on my part of the apartment. I really like bathing. I really like soaking. I went and bought something like $40 or $50 bathtub, which is a portable bathtub. You can unfold it. It's quite small. You can fill it up with water. And I was very happy to soak in it. And it's my bathtub. It's the same case with you potentially of wanting to live in your own apartment. There might be multiple reasons, but part of the factor probably is that it's your apartment you're in. You've earned the right to be in it. It's the same of having your car. It's 100% yours.
Right, but the value is in it being yours, not in you buying it.
I don't believe that is true. I believe part of it is you did buy it. I think part of it is you earned it.
That's one of those things where I still have to ask why. Like, so let's say someone...
I think why people like the feeling of owning something is because they earned it. And you don't always know the reason for why you feel something.
Let's say
it might be a misplaced economy.
You wake up one morning and there's a portable bathtub just in the middle of your living room. No, nothing. It's just there. So it's yours. You now have a portable bathtub. And no one can take it away from you. No one can guilt you into it because they bought it for you. No one can, but you now have this. Or you wake up in a mansion and on the table is the deed with your name on it. And it's boom, this is your place.
So I wanted a bathtub and I got a bathtub. I went through the process to get it. It is something I desired to have. It was my desire to have a bathtub and I went through ways to getting it. Now maybe I said I want a bathtub and then the ether gave me a bathtub.
Yeah.
That's partly me asking for it and receiving it. There is a certain amount of earning there. Something that I desired there, but I don't know what my relation to that bathtub would be, because prospectively I could say, oh, well, it's not given to me. I didn't earn it, it was just given to me. Or I could make the argument that, well, I did earn it because I wanted a bathtub and then I got one, so obviously God gave me one, and that's an earning in its own right. But I cannot say my reaction to that until it is actually given. It's a spiritual thing. And one of the problems with this sort of spiritual thing is you don't know it until it is yours.
You don't know what?
If it feels right or not.
If what feels right?
If it feels earned or not, the thing you've gotten. If it feels right, if it is yours, if it is truly yours, or if it's a gift given to you. Or it's just a thing you have that you accept as easily as you accept as breathing.
So you don't know if you have something until you have it? Is that what you just said?
Yes.
What is...
You gave me the hypothetical of the bathtub.
Yeah. And
it's a spiritual thing that I don't know how I would feel about getting the quantum bathtub.
Right. Okay, I'll look at maybe from a different perspective. So first of all, though, you're saying that the problem here with democracy is the means, being that you are given the vote for free and therefore it has no value.
That is the one half, yes.
Okay.
The other half is to participate in government of any sort. You also have to have the right to vote to participate in government. So you have to earn the right to be in government as well.
Can you say that again? Sorry.
So the other half is you have to be in government, you have to be a citizen, or you have to have the right to vote to be in government.
The other half of what? Like that's the ends?
Yeah.
How is that an end? Like the end is the result of democracy, right? So...
Sorry, then, no, this is both means, then. That's another means. So the end... I'm getting caught up in my own brain. We can leave the end as fine in this hypothetical for the service.
So you're saying that the problem with democracy is the means because it's not owned. The problem with democracy is the means because it's not earned and you're not part of the government.
No.
You said you had to be part of the government as part of the means.
No, I did not. Or maybe I misspoke. Okay, look. The problem with democracy we're looking at right now is that it is valueless. There's no value to it. Anyone can participate in it. It is a guaranteed without value. So people don't care. So in the UK, currently with a ruling mandate is the Labour government. They had a 20% of the vote share. This happened because of mass voter apathy.
Right, so let's slow down.
No, I'm not.
No, I don't want to go too far because you keep adding like 500 things and I have no idea what you're talking about because you're bringing in so many examples at once.
This is one example.
No, because I don't even know the thesis yet. Before I get the examples and I don't need any proof and I just want the thesis. And the thesis seems to be that
I'm trying to explain the thesis.
No. A thesis is not an example. A thesis is just
no. I've explained the thesis. Then the thesis is that there is no value in a vote freely given.
Okay, and that's it. Stop. Boom.
Yes.
Okay. Right. And so that whole thing about the government, that was something else.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we'll stop. Okay. So.
Well, maybe. I'm not certain yet. I'm not certain if I explained correctly to you, but let's go with that. That there is no value in a vote freely given.
Now you're adding a bunch of stuff again.
No, I'm not.
You're like, oh, that might not be it, but okay.
I'm saying we might not be communicating correctly, but let's say we are. Let's say we
Yeah,
understand.
and if we get it wrong, you can correct me. Yeah, okay. But I want to keep it simple, and then if I get it wrong, you correct me. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's why I asked about that first thing where you said that was crazy. Okay, so the problem with democracy is that the votes are worthless because they are given freely.
Yes.
Okay. And so the solution is to make you have to earn the vote.
Yes.
Okay. So, okay. And now, so my first contention is with the idea that something given freely is worthless. So that's my first contention. Okay. All right. We've got an order of operations here. Okay. So, a lot of people say, so right now we're talking about, we're debating or discussing, dialecting the idea, is something given freely worthless, right? So, okay. So, a lot of people say with Dark Souls that you shouldn't have an easy mode because then it wouldn't be earned, right?
Yeah.
And I agree that Dark Souls shouldn't have an easy mode, but I don't think it's because it's not earned. I think it's because you can't have an easy mode for a dance or a piece of music. It's no longer that dance or piece of music, right? Like, you're playing Fur Elise and someone's like, oh man, I want to play the easy version of Fur Elise. It's like, no, well, that's not Fur Elise, right? If you want that experience that Beethoven had of playing Fur Elise, you have to play the original Fur Elise. If you play easy Fur Elise, you're still playing a song, and maybe it's a nice song, but you're not playing Fur Elise. So I think sometimes, but a lot of the discussion about Dark Souls is instead about you have to earn it, because what they're trying to say the same thing. They're trying to say it doesn't feel like you're having the proper experience unless you go through the same steps I went through. So I think that something given freely is has no value might be a similar situation where it's actually if something is given freely to you, you often avoid most of the steps, such as you said, actually wanting the thing in the first place. Right?
Yes.
So you should have to want something before you get it. Otherwise, it's just garbage that's cluttering your house or cluttering your mind if it's an idea. And it's the same idea with the we talked about, I believe, the different styles of teaching where there's cultures like the cultures up here where the idea was that you tell the kid you need to learn how to cut up a moose in winter, and they wouldn't tell them how. They just say figure it out, because the idea was that if you taught them it, then they wouldn't understand the reasoning behind it. But if they figured it out, then they would understand it on a deeper level. And we were talking about how you read a bunch of textbooks and you have more knowledge than anyone ever has had, but you don't actually understand it on a deep level. Dust in the room? Gee. I feel like I'm inhaling splinters. So I think maybe with something given freely, it could actually be people that don't care to vote shouldn't be voting. Like but if someone that wants to vote, then they could go for it.
Individually, I can agree with you. However, voting is not about the individual. I mean, it kind of is about the individual, but to join a fraternity, you have to run through campus naked.
Yeah, because everyone else has done it.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is that? That is, you are earning your right to be there, but there's something more than it being...
It's initiation.
It's initiation, but I'm saying there's something there. There is a golden mist.
Yeah, initiation. Like you join the cult, you join the mystery, you're initiated. You become a man, you're initiated through the rituals of manhood.
Yeah, but you have to earn that initiation.
Well, I don't think you have to earn the initiation. I think that the initiation is the earning.
Sure, if you want to put the words like that. That is what democracy is. That is the... No, I'm not going to twist Heinlein's words because I can't remember them exactly, but the earn that I think is being talked about, or no, the earn that I'm going to talk about is that initiation.
Yeah.
And so you need that there because you said people who don't want to be involved shouldn't vote, but they're going to be an idiot and they're going to vote anyways. They're going to be told that it's your duty to vote, and so they're going to vote for the people that told them to vote. They don't care. It is a meaningless platitude to them. The whole thing is but a joke of which man in a grey suit slowly drones at them from the left or right side of the aisle. there is no value in it to them because they do not care. And I think a lot of people do disagree with you that you do actually have to earn something. I think a lot of people do disagree with you on the Dark Soul things. And maybe that's how they view the world. I don't agree with them on that. But there's many layers of ways to talk spiritually about things. And we have a limited amount of words. Like, there's 4 different words for love. So there could be communication problems, or it could be the easiest way to try and communicate a complex idea.
Yeah, well, let's pare it back down again. So maybe to rephrase then the original problem. So could we say instead that the problem with democracy is that you are not initiated into the franchise, and franchise being the ability to vote?
Partly. The thing is, not everyone should be initiated. It should be your choice to be initiated or not.
Yeah, but why is that only partly then?
Well, your statement sort of puts a thing in place which is like, all right, you get slapped in the face twice. You are initiated into democracy. It becomes a rote ritual, and you get everyone involved again.
Yeah, well, that's what the military service sounds like to me as well. But that's why that makes sense though, because then what you're saying makes sense, because you had this strong distinction the first time we talked about this, about a military service like Israel or Sweden not counting, like the draft, for example. And so that was where you were making that distinction, I think, was that you wanted to be sure that people had an option not to be initiated. It wasn't so that, yes. So we can still keep the wording, but we want to be sure that there's an option. So the problem with democracy is that there is not a voluntary initiation for the franchise.
Yeah.
Something like that. It's probably a way to use smaller words to say it.
I don't agree that everything needs to be put in as small words as possible, but it makes it easier to understand.
Yeah, well, that's... Blaise Pascal, he was a mathematician, I believe, and he wrote this... One of his letters he wrote ended with, "I'm sorry that this letter's so long. If I had had more time, it would have been shorter."
Yeah.
It's such a great line. Because you want to be clear, right? You don't want to just have a mess of ideas that people have to... That's how you end up with stuff like The Maps of Meaning by Jordan Peterson, or you end up with Mein Kampf to a degree even, or The Communist Manifesto. These are books that very few people actually understand because they're horribly written. They didn't take the time to make their ideas clear, bullet point. Like, if you read the Doctrines of Fascism by Mussolini, it is so clear, it's so precise, you know exactly what fascism is. It's the most clear ideology there is, basically.
Yeah.
Which is funny, because fascism is probably also the ideology which is most improperly applied to everything. But I think having things be understandable is very important, because then you can actually have a conversation, right?
Yeah.
And instead of just drawing things in. So okay, so the problem...
I don't like the problem, because my premise of this was trying to salvage democracy as it is.
Yeah, but that's...
No,
but that's not the premise.
No, it is, because I have a lot bigger problems with democracy, which is democracy actually can't truly be saved. This was me trying to fix democracy without that, but there's bigger problems that actually can't be fixed within democracy. There's fundamental flaws with democracy.
Yeah.
That go far beyond this little thing.
Okay, then what are those?
I don't want to cover those yet, because I want to go back to what you have to say about this SOCID solution, or this SOCID problem.
Okay, well, because I think I don't care about the solution until I agree there's a problem, right? And I haven't seen a problem yet. So, although I think we're starting to get one, but you said that this little part of it doesn't actually matter that much.
This part of it is trying to fix democracy within democracy.
No, but forget fixing democracy for now. Just what's the problem with democracy, I think, is an important first step. And so the premise, and that's why I say the premise isn't the solution or anything. The premise is actually that there's a flaw with democracy, because if there is no flaw, there's no point in having a solution. Or there's no point in saying... No, even before that, saying democracy is unsalvageable suggests that something's wrong with it, right? Like, so... We have to first...
But this whole thing started as a hypothetical of me trying to do at least one thing to fix democracy as it stands. But even then, I don't think it's good enough anymore, especially after thinking after a while. But I want to...
Okay, well then I don't care about your solution, because if democracy doesn't work, I don't care about the solution. So... Or rather...
You might not care about it, but I cared about the conversation we had in examining the whole thing. So I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right, but... If we get to the point where we have a solution for this tiny little fraction of democracy that's broken, but democracy is unsalvageable, we're just wasting our time, right? Because it's unsalvageable anyways. So before I even try to look at the solution, I want to see if I agree that it is unsalvageable. Now, if I think democracy can be salvageable, then I look at your solution and I say, okay, maybe your solution works.
Okay.
So why is democracy unsalvageable? Or before that, what's wrong with it then? Yeah. And means or ends again, I guess, as well.
Both means and ends. Democracy and governments is a problem of logistics. The whole idea behind it is mass organization. Now, we wish to work together because working together makes things happen faster and better.
You ever do a group project?
I have.
Yeah.
I've done group projects with a person who's brilliant at doing them. I've done them with people who aren't brilliant at them. But the idea behind it is sometimes you need 4 men to lift a marble pillar. One man simply cannot do it himself.
Okay. Is that the point of democracy?
In a nutshell, yes.
Because I don't think that is. I think democracy is more a matter of, look, I really want to pee in that river, but you want to drink from it. So, let's figure something out here.
Okay, sorry, that's one half. There's 2 halves of democracy then. The 2 halves of democracy, they're both logistical in the end of what democracy is, but what it's for. Because its purpose, democracy's purpose, is picking up a pillar with 4 people.
Yeah.
And stopping people from peeing into rivers.
Right, because not stopping from peeing in rivers, peeing in ones that you're drinking from.
Yeah.
Or at least time sharing the river.
So choosing...
Negotiating a conflict, basically.
Negotiating conflict. That was the 2 parts of democracy.
So I think the 4 people lifting a pillar, I think that's none of the government's business.
Do you?
Yeah. I'm not sure if I would say fully, but I think for the most part, that's none of the government's business. That's for the free market.
I'm going to disagree with you.
All right, fascist. Now who's the fascist?
Yep.
Everything within the state, nothing outside the state.
I think that they can exist in parallel, but I think that is a secondary purpose of it.
Okay. So
I think the government can be a part of the free market.
Literally fascism.
Sure.
No, literally.
I'm not saying the government is the free market. I'm saying it can be a part of it.
So Mussolini.
Anyways, the problem with the resolving conflicts. All right, no. Let's go back to Israel.
All right.
No, let's go back to before Israel. Let's go back to Moses.
Okay.
The Exodus.
Okay.
So, Moses was escorting a bunch of crybabies.
Yeah.
Who are always whining.
Yeah.
And he had to judge them constantly. And it got to be too much for him.
Yeah.
He's one man. It's too big of a problem. But the fundamental start of that story that we're talking about is judgment.
Yeah.
Conflict resolution. How do you stop from 2 people living in the same space from murdering each other? That is what government is. And that's what you view it as.
Yeah.
So, it's a logistical problem, though.
Yeah. How do you stop 2? I think it's like, I'd make it slightly larger than that. It's like the concept of interpersonal dynamics. So, like property ownership, for instance. Yeah. Like, I think...
The resolution of interpersonal relationships.
Yeah. So, if you don't have a government, everything breaks down, then everyone's murdering each other.
Yes.
But the government isn't supposed to... The government's not there just to hold people apart. It's actually, hopefully, to say, okay, you own some... I think property ownership would be a very good foundation. Yeah. The government is basically... You could have a government, and all it is a stack of papers that says, you own this, you own that, you... I think that would be a pretty good... Well, no, because it would be social norms so that you don't, like, steal your neighbor's wife or something. So it's not quite just ownership. It's like, you're screaming in the middle of the night while there's wolves circling. It's like, okay, we're going to just chuck you into the wolves because you're a liability. So that's government. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So stopping people from killing each other, interpersonal dynamic. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's one part of government anyways.
Yeah. And then the other part is
fascism. But,
well,
I'll take it.
I think, there's always a little bit of...
I'm just getting started.
Leeway. Okay. So the problem with government is that it stops people from killing each other.
No.
Okay.
The problem is the logistics of it. So the more people you have, the more logistically it becomes difficult because if you're all going to agree to the same franchise, which is the idea. So what you could do is you could have tons and tons of little tribes.
Yeah.
And then it's...
Like with Moses.
Yeah. It's easy to agree with the same franchise. However, what if all those tribes are in the same valley? Then it becomes difficult. And you either get warring factions who kill each other, or they join the same franchise. But then all of them need judgment. So how do you...
So when you're saying join the franchise, what does that mean? Just to be clear.
Join the tribe, join the group, join the legal agreement system thingy, Madauber.
So join the same government.
Yeah.
Yeah, because franchise is the right to vote, right? So it's okay. So I guess it's I'm not sure what it means because it's also like a property, right? Like a movie franchise or
Yeah.
I don't know what it's.
There's a legal franchise. The collective.
Yeah, I guess. I've never really thought about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so you can either kill each other or you can join the collective.
Wait, well, where did that come from?
If you have a valley full of tribes.
Yeah.
But they're so close to each other.
Right, that they need to intermediate between themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you don't have to join. You can have peace treaties, right? Like, Europe, it's not like you either join Germany or you die. It's like you could also say, no, I'm France and this is my border. And
Yes. Yeah, you can do that too.
yeah.
But that's getting into the weeds of pointlessness.
Well, I don't think it is, because you're saying that government leads to hegemony, basically.
It will. Because the people over there are idiots.
No, because like Europe has multiple countries, right? And like Asia has multiple countries, and like the Scandinavians are 4 different countries, and like United States and Canada are 2 different countries. I think like there's a lot of pushing to unify, sure, definitely, but you can still keep like there's never been a point.
All right. Anyways. So it is important. It's something to be discussed, but it's not important to the point I'm trying to make right now.
Okay.
Or maybe it will be, but let me finish my thoughts.
Okay.
So, and it's still a logistical problem. So, because maybe the tribes in the valley all want to be a part of the same franchise or the same government.
Okay.
For whatever insane reason that might be, you weird libertarian woodsman.
So basically, governments are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's going to get harder and harder to manage them.
Potentially. I mean, there's no guarantee they're going to get bigger, but it's hard. If they're big, they're hard to manage. I'm not saying they're going to get bigger, but history seems to have proven they do anyways.
Yeah.
I don't care about that part of this. It is that the bigger they are, the harder they are to manage.
Yeah.
So, there are multiple ways of managing them, but if we're going to go with voting to manage them,
Yeah.
the thing with voting is if you have a group of 10 people,
Yeah.
you can say, do we want to live on the west side of the river or the east side of the river? All in favor, raise your hands.
Yeah.
And so that you move to the left side, you move to the right side. You say, do we want to eat pork or do we want to hunt a moose?
Mm-hmm.
All in favor, raise your left hand, whatever. When you get 100 people, it's still manageable, but it'll take a little bit of time to count the hands. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And when you get 200 people, you go, all right, do we want to eat pork or do we want to hunt a moose? Who said you should tell us if we want to eat pork or hunt a moose? I want to fish. And so, I was like, okay, do you want to eat pork?
So the question is, who's choosing what you vote on? Is that the...
That's part of it. There's that's one part of it, but it's also there's someone who there's dissenting opinions. And so even let's say we have a spokesman without any other problems right now. Well, we do have a spokesman. But now the logistics gets a little more complicated because it's 200 people, we have 3 options. And there's a lot of choices to be made every single day.
Yeah.
And if you want to interact as this large group, you're going to have to make these choices constantly, and that's going to take time. Then the guy with 200 people who all listen to him absolutely will just stomp on your face while you're deciding to use spears or swords.
Yeah, like Athens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's a logistical problem here.
Yeah.
And so the solution is you have representatives, and even then there's the solution of who's the guy who chooses what you vote on. That's a statistical problem as well.
And that can be solved by, like, what are those things called where everyone signs them? Petitions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is legal precedent in British and I think Canadian government for petitions where it has to be tabled in Parliament if enough people sign one. So
yeah.
So those have been thought about and fixed, yeah.
Yeah, so there's petitions, all that. So you get your different forms of democratic government,
yeah,
which seek to navigate the logistics problem.
Yeah.
Because it is having a large group of people is a logistical problem of deciding who does what. And a lot of it comes down to basically focusing the will of the people into one person who represents you.
Yeah.
So one part of this problem is the person who wants to be... There's people who have to be represented.
Yeah.
And those people are human.
Yeah.
And so your representational system has a certain amount of time it runs before we choose who represents us again.
Yeah.
So, and this is a time frame where you want to appear to be as good as possible. So you're going to do things in the short term. And sometimes people do things in the long term. But there is a certain amount of prescient investment in it.
What does prescient mean? I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Immediate.
Okay.
Sorry, not prescient. Prescient. There we go.
Okay.
There's a certain amount of immediate investment in it. That it is prescient. Is a good idea to do it quickly.
So I think what you're talking about right now, just to be clear, is you're talking about you have like a 5-term government. You have 5 years term in government or a 4-year term in government. Yeah. So you want to look as good as possible on a 4-year term to get reelected. So you're going to do things that pay off in 4 years or less, not things that pay off in 20 years or 30 years. Or
yes.
40. Yeah. Okay.
Now, that is one part of the problem. So that is problem number one.
So problem number one with democracy is that in order to seek...
It does not promote long-term investment.
So problem one with democracy is that in order to seek re-election, you will do short-term gains at the expense of long-term problems, potentially.
Yeah.
Okay. So is that a democracy problem or a democracy as we have a problem? Like you could have, for example, you could limit a term to 1 term. So you're only allowed 1 term. And then whatever happens, happens. Or you could say terms are 50 years long. So you get elected, you're in for 50 years.
Problem number 2.
Okay. So I don't think that's an inherently democracy problem, right? You could imagine a kingdom where you only have a 4-year term, right? And then you switch to the next king. Like there's a lot of royals in the royal family. You could just keep going down the line. Like.
Yes. But, okay, so you have a 40-year election.
Yeah.
So, well, I didn't vote for him. But I'm supposed to be able to, but I didn't vote for him.
Right.
This is a democracy, but I don't get any will here.
No.
You've destroyed democracy.
Have I thought, because I don't think a democracy is necessarily voting for, the Athenians actually had a democracy where you had to earn your position to have the vote. You had to own property or weapons or something. And then they voted on every single issue and it was stupid, right? Because they're like, oh, Sparta's going to attack. No, they're not. Yeah, they are. And then they just got destroyed, right? So I don't think that...
Why haven't we done a 40-year democracy?
I don't know. And maybe it is for that reason you're saying, that people want to be able to vote more often. But what I'm getting at, I guess, is that Athens had a democracy. We now look at that and we're like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And we don't vote on every issue, yet we can still consider ourselves to be a democracy, right? So being a democracy doesn't mean you're voting constantly all the time. So you could, in theory, just, oh yeah, sorry, them's the breaks, you don't get to vote, and it's still a democracy, right? Like, someone's, I don't know what the voting age is. 20? 19? 18? Okay, so you're 17, and Trudeau gets elected.
Yep,
you have to wait 5 years until you get to vote again.
Yep.
Vote, or even 6 years, really, right? So, and we don't go, oh no, we're not living in a democracy, right? So you could see a 40-year period. Yeah. And you're probably right, though, that the reason we don't have that is because people, if they do have it, immediately vote for a shorter term.
Yeah.
Because they're like, well, I think what it is, right, is you don't want to commit to having someone for 40 years. Because if they suck year 2, you want to be able to get them out year 4 instead of year 50, right?
Yeah.
So it's probably so that you can't keep a bad person in forever. Yeah. Okay.
So, now I'm the one with the lettuce in the brain.
I'll riff a little.
No, don't. Anyways, I do see that as a problem of there is a lack of investment. And sometimes there isn't. Sometimes people do events in the future. So in Alberta...
Well, okay. Let's not mix up terms here. So the problem is that the leader of the country isn't incentivized to go for long-term solutions. Yeah. Okay.
And there's a second problem to that, which is long-term investment can be destroyed.
Yeah. The new person comes in and they cash in for a bunch of money.
In Alberta, they made a bunch of money from their rainy day oil fund. Sorry, they made a bunch of money from oil.
Yeah.
And so the PM at the time put it into a rainy day fund. And it was massive. And his idea is oil's not going to last forever in Alberta. We're going to need other things to spend money on. Technologies and things aren't there to invest in. So we're going to put this money aside. And when the opportunity comes, we could build massive solar farms, or we could invest in new infrastructure because our infrastructure will get old.
Yeah, like what Norway did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the next guy who got elected wasn't this leader.
Yeah.
And he spent that money on parades and things to keep getting him elected.
Like what Venezuela did.
Yeah, he spent his money on brand circuses.
Yeah.
And it completely destroyed that fund. So one leader had a long-term plan.
Yeah.
And the next guy destroyed it.
That's actually really interesting. What is the difference between Venezuela and Norway? I mean, this is something economists study like crazy because they were very similar countries and now they're very different countries. But they're both democracies, right? But Norway's worked. So it's an interesting question of like...
Norway's a constitutional monarchy.
Do they still have it? I think, yeah.
They do.
And do you think that's the difference? I mean, that's fun to say, but do you actually think that's the because why didn't Norway spend all their money? Like, do you think because the king wouldn't let them, or because they have this inherent stability because they have a king, or...
I think it's culture of the time of which their civilization existed over.
So could you just have... So could democracy be dangerous in the wrong culture, but like you have like a South American culture, maybe they shouldn't have a democracy, maybe they should have a kingdom. And this is actually a really interesting idea, right? So what if, people talk a lot about like Brazil has this very corrupt culture, right?
Yeah.
What if it's not corrupt? What if it is passed through the lens of the wrong government or the wrong environment or something? Like if you took Brazilian culture and put it in the Australian outback and made them an anarchist country, they would suddenly be flourishing and rich and happy and everyone would love each other. Or if you took like Norwegian culture and you put that in a kingdom in Hawaii, it would fall apart in like 2 days because that culture should not be in a kingdom in Hawaii. Like it's kind of an interesting idea, eh? Like,
yeah.
And
there are things I could say that, but I'm trying to hold together this concept in my brain.
Okay.
So if you remember that, we can talk about that afterwards.
Okay.
So those are two problems. There is about there is whatever period is, one person can undo the one thing. Someone's going to do everything to get elected. That's why they talk about the second term of the president is far more important than the first, because the first term is them advertising for a second term.
Yeah. So if you had a single term, then they couldn't do that, right? They would just be... Then you'd have like the Roman consuls situation.
And then you have the problem...
Where they go out in a blaze of glory.
Yeah, or with what I said with Alberta.
Yeah. Where you have but that was to get reelected in Alberta, right? The consuls had 2 years and they were done, right?
Yeah, so blaze of glory.
So it's like every 2 years your leader goes out in a blaze of glory.
Yeah, so...
But that worked for Rome for a long time, to be fair.
Well, democracies worked for 200 years.
Yeah, I think Rome it was longer. Like, it wasn't democracy, but the consuls were going.
So, the next problem with democracy, that's one of the major problems, though, is the leader can leave.
Let's go back to what you just said before you said the leader can leave. You said that's one of the main problems with democracy, but I'm still not convinced that's democracy. I think that's a problem with leadership, maybe. Like, if you have a kingdom, like... You live in Liechtenstein. You have a king for the next 40 years. It's like, well, I didn't vote for you. You have that problem for the next 40 years where you didn't get to choose the king. And if you have a king every like 4 years, or like you have the year of 4 emperors in Rome, you're having this problem of people desperately trying to stay in power while they get assassinated left and right. And
we're not talking about monarchies yet.
Right, but what I'm saying is that it's not a problem with democracy that the people that you can... Bad leaders isn't a democracy problem. That's a leadership problem. So it's not that democracy is inherently flawed in that way. It's that leadership is inherently flawed in that way.
The president doesn't own the states. He's not abandoning something if he leaves. He has his money. He can get away.
Right, but like you look at Commodus or someone who was having parties all the time, right? And just like literally bread and circuses comes from Rome, right? Like that wasn't a democracy. That was an empire. And they kept trying to please the people so that people wouldn't kill them, and just wasting their fortune, wasting all the money that they had built up over time that Augustus had given Rome like infinite money, and it took them like 2,000 years to waste it all, but they did eventually, right? Well, it took them 1,000 years to waste it all, but they did eventually. So it wasn't democracy wasn't the problem there. That was the problem, was that you're getting led by humans.
So it's a problem with democracy.
No, it's a problem with any government except anarchy.
So I had this all worked out at 3 a.m. last night.
How about this? All democracies are flawed, but not all flaws are democratic.
Yes. So My problem, I'm saying flaws with democracy. You're telling me they're flaws in general. And they can be both things.
Yeah, so it's not an inherent flaw in democracy is what I'm getting at.
Yes, is a flaw in our current democracy, which seems to be promulgated by the democracy we had. It doesn't address the problems. Now, you could do a bunch of little things to try to address these problems. So let me try to get to my point instead of saying the flaws of democracy. Let me talk about monarchy, because that's where this is going.
Okay.
So, the government that I think would work better is a monarchy.
Okay.
But there's a problem with a monarchy, which is the king can go insane.
Or they can be a terrible ruler.
Or they can be a terrible ruler.
Or they can waste all the money that the previous guy made from oil trying to have parties and make people like him.
Yes.
Yeah.
However, they're less likely to do that. They can still do that. And they have a longer time frame to do it over. But they're less likely to do that because the land belongs to them and they wish to invest and hold it. And they have long-term planning to a certain extent because they're going to be stuck in this land for the 60 years that they have to live. Now, another thing to look at with this is they might know something. So, Milei in Argentina has reduced inflation.
Yeah.
And he has gotten rid of the amount of poverty from 50 or 60% down to 30% in his 2 years so far, or his year.
It's just under a year, I think.
Yeah, just under a year. So he's reduced a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, I've heard. I don't know.
No. Tell me what you've heard, because this is the next part of it.
Yeah, well, it's just like poverty is difficult. This is true in Canada as well, right? But it's a very hard stat to measure.
Yeah.
Like the inflation is one we can look at and be like, okay, this is the inflation rate. But something like poverty, it's like, what has he actually done here?
So what has he actually done? A lot of people lost jobs because of him, because he terminated a huge amount of government's offices. A lot of people hate him because he's done a huge amount of damage to various different systems.
Yeah, well, I like what he's doing personally. Yeah. I think, but what I think so. But what I'm getting at is that it's hard to credit him. I think from what this is why I was hesitant to say it, not because I don't want to take away from the point, but because I'm not certain on this. But what I have heard is that it's difficult to make any sort of claims about reducing poverty or real wages, especially in the short term.
Yes.
You can say things like he's definitely massively decreased inflation, like insanely so.
Yeah, and well, there's problems in the short term. The short-term vision is foggy. It is painful. He might be doing, he might not. We don't know in the short term. People don't know anything in the short term. Yeah, is what I'm getting at. And right now you are suffering. You don't want to walk through the desert. It was easier to stay in Egypt than travel through the desert. You got food there. It was easy there. Because people view things in the short term as well. And so if you want power, then you placate that short-term planning. Whereas a monarch might be hated in the short term for a bit, but they actually might be making the right choices. They could be making the wrong choices. However, they have the ability of long-sightedness, which a lot of governments aren't allowed. The monarch has long-sightedness. But there are the problems with the monarch. I think there's a lot of advantages with the monarch, which is they have long-sightedness. They have an investment in the land. Now, yes, there is the flaw, like Nero fiddling with money, or Commodus having all the brand circuses parties. There's those problems, but they also do have the want to see their land prosperous because it's theirs.
So what you were saying with the military things, you just want some way for the elected officials to have the land be theirs as well.
Partly.
But you don't feel like Canada is yours? Like this isn't your home?
No, this is. No, that's not what I was saying with the military. Sorry, I was saying you want the franchise to be yours.
Right, but what I'm getting at is like a politician you elect to be the prime minister of your country or the president. They grew up in that country, right? Like that is their home. They love their home. Like is there a reason a king loves their land more than one of the people in the land? Like it's the same. They're the same people.
No one wants to be a king in exile.
What do you mean? What does that mean?
If you're a king, you don't want to be in exile.
Yeah, but nobody wants to be in exile.
Yeah.
I don't like. Do you think kings have a special connection to the land that the people don't? Like, The Wanderer, right? That poem, that was a guy in exile. He wasn't a king.
All a king is, though, is a king. You don't get to be anything else.
So what? The king is the embodiment of the spirit of the land?
Spirit of the people. And the people are the land.
The king is the spirit of the people.
Yeah.
Now I've talked to you about Indra's net, right? Like, he's the Indian god. He had this net, and at each intersection there's a bead, and each bead in the net reflects every other bead in the net. And it's this infinitely large net.
Yeah.
So, like, what if each person was, like, the spirit of like the land and of every other person. And that is the connection that they have to each other and the land, and that is the self-governance thing we talked about last time. Right? That's every person is a king.
It's very, what is that called? The British Agreement of you?
What, like the Magna Carta or
Yeah, it's
something?
very Magna Carta of you. So the king can go mad.
Yeah.
So we do have to be able to deal with that. That's what the barons are for.
Yeah.
You have 40 barons, each with their own army.
Yeah.
But you have the army so you don't have to fight each other.
Yeah.
The king's army is worth 20 barons' armies.
Yeah.
But you don't have to fight each other because you have the armies. And so you're in the council of the barons. And so the king says, this is what I want done. And the barons say, okay, we'll see that done. The barons go to their ministers and say, this is the vision the king has for our people.
Yeah.
And the ministers who are elected by the people say, okay, we will see that done. Or they say to the barons, this is not what the people asked for. And then the barons go back to the king and say, yo, this is not what the people asked for. And the king goes, trust me. And so barons go, okay, we'll try to trust you. And then the 40 barons watch and see if what the king did was better or for worse. And then they decide if they trust the king or not after that. Now, could all the barons become corrupt? Yes, but there is a duty that is implanted in them. And it is, again, I think it does eliminate partly the short-term view of democracy, because democracy just feels really short-term to me. It's very short-sighted.
But like I said, that isn't inherent to democracy. A king can be short-sighted.
Democracy is always short-sighted. A king can be short-sighted.
What about Norway?
They have so much money they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, but
they're frivoling it away, but they have so much they can't spend all.
Same with Venezuela. Venezuela had insane amounts of money, and they spent it all. Norway is being very careful with it. They have a huge oil fund that they're very careful.
And maybe it is because Norway has a monarchy.
But it might not be. It's a fairly weak monarchy as monarchies go. It's not like, there's like
maybe
Thailand
it's because Norway had a monarchy.
But or what about the United States? Like the United States Constitution is one of the greatest documents ever written. That was some farsightedness by democracy. Like Jefferson, Washington, all those guys.
Yeah.
Like I don't think
that was written before the democracy.
And then they immediately lost their farsightedness.
Kind of, yeah.
What, George Washington stepped down after his second term.
Also, the United States isn't a democracy as we think of it. It's a republic.
That's a democracy.
It's a constitutional republic.
Yeah, that's a kind of democracy. Democracy is the superset, and then a republic is a kind of democracy.
Sure.
Like a direct democracy, like Athens, is something no one does because it's crazy.
Yeah.
Republics are way more sane.
Yeah, well, even what I expressed was a constitutional monarchy.
Well, that's almost like a feudal system. There is actually an interesting... What you said is actually... And this is... I wish I knew enough about this to really talk about this, but what you were talking about was the standard form of monarchy. Basically, a king would appoint a prime minister or some equivalent. That guy would handle the government stuff for the most part. King was the final say. And like you said, they had the nobility that would... they were kind of like his ministers in a way. And they would keep him in check. And
that wasn't the standard form monarchy. That was only the UK.
No, that was France as well.
They might have gone that, but like if you look at Asian monarchies, they are so different.
Yeah, okay, so European monarchies then.
Even then, if you look at like Russian or...
No, so the reason that they had the revolution was because Tsar Nicholas said, hey, here's a long-term plan I want to do. And the people revolted and killed him, like to a degree. He was also a crazy ruler. He got hit in the head. He was a crazy ruler.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. They didn't... many places didn't have the barons.
Yeah.
Only the UK had the barons.
No, so did France.
Well, France belonged to the UK for 100 years.
No, but that was a French system as well. They had 3 tiers of government. They had the king, they had the nobility, and they had the people.
Yeah.
And Rome, Senatus Populus Quorum Republic, right? That was the structure of Rome. And before the Roman Empire, you had the people, the Senate, and you had the people they elected, the triumvirate, and you had the people. Like that is a very common system. Is the 3 layers of government, 3 or 4 layers of government.
Okay, well maybe it is a common thing.
So what happened in France was Louis XIV came along, and the nobility was killing the country. They were choking it, and they how did that work? I think the people had money, the king had no money, and the nobility had all the money. And so Louis XIV came along, and he sucked all the money from the nobility, and he sucked all the power from the nobility. He didn't have any ministers. He did all the government himself. He became a supreme monarch who handled everything himself. It was really weird. But that's the view we have when we think of monarchy a lot of the time, is the supreme monarch. But that was Louis XIV and Louis XIV only. Except his descendants after him also did it. But the problem is, there's only one Louis XIV. He made it work, but they didn't. And when the nobility went into such debt, that was part of the reason you had the dissatisfaction of nobility, and then, what did that lead to? That led to something else, and that led to the revolution, basically. They turned against the crown, and like Louis XIV he's like this black hole of history that changed everything in France. So he's a really interesting figure. But
why did the monarchy in the UK lose its power?
That was Charles. Well, they did it a few times, right? Like the UK has had like 17 civil wars or something.
They've only really had 3.
No, they have had so many. They have, like, I think it's actually 17. Like, they have had so many civil wars in the UK, it's ridiculous. I don't know if any countries had more.
France, China.
No, I think the UK's had more. China, I don't know if that counts as civil war in China. It's very uncivil. No, in China, I think that's just full-blown war.
I can only think of the 3. I can actually really only think of 2 civil wars in the UK.
Oh, there's so many.
I can only think of 2 that mattered.
Let's see. No, they had a lot that mattered.
Click on that.
This one?
Yeah.
List of civil wars. So they had the Anarchy, the First Barons' War, the Second Barons' War, the Despencer War, the invasion of England, War of the Roses, the English Civil War, the Jacobite Rebellion, Jacobite rebellions, of which there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 7 to 13 civil wars. And then
the Jacob Rebellion is not a civil war. That's rival claimants to the throne.
That's a civil war. You have people support one guy, you have people support the other.
Yes.
And then they've also had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 uprisings. Like the Glorious Revolution, the Cornish Rebellion, the Monmouth Rebellion, Jack Cade Rebellion, Peasant Revolt, Welsh Uprising, Revolt of 1173, the Rebellions of 1088, the Ely Rebellion, and the Harrying of the North.
How many of these rebellions have resulted in the death of a monarch? Because I'm pretty certain only 1 or 2 of them have.
You had, I think, quite a few.
Because the War of the Roses had the opponent get killed or exiled. Well, and then the rebellion where the king was unjustly killed by old Wartface.
The English Civil War? Well, yeah, that's the other thing. The English Civil War was the first English Civil War, the second English Civil War, and the third English Civil War. Those were all part of the English Civil War.
Yeah.
They had 3 wars over the course of a decade. So, yeah, like I said, like 17 civil wars or more. You could probably get like 32 if you, depending on how you counted it. It is, like, we make fun of France for revolting, but like the UK, man.
I wonder how bloody their revolutions are, though.
I don't actually know. I think the War of the Roses was nasty.
Yeah, well, that's why I think about it. The War of the Roses was a nasty war, and the revolution where the king was unjustly killed was kind of nasty.
Well, let's pick one at random. First Baron War. You had King John died. This was where the Magna Carta was put into.
Yeah, this was with King John and the agreement with the barons. Okay.
So this was led by Robert Fitzwalter against King John. Now, the one thing to keep in mind about the UK, which I don't know if I'll put in here, they were like this very petty little kingdom for a very long time. So it might have been like 6 people died. That was half their population. Like they're until about, I don't know, like the 1600s, their wars were like 400 people against 400 or something. And then you look at China with like 500,000. Like the UK was just this part. Have you seen that the Romans writing on the UK when they conquered it, and they were talking about like they just live in the swamp, and if you invade them, they just go and they live underwater for 3 days at a time. They're like, it's this horrible swamp. Ooh, the siege and the Battle of Sandwich. Yeah. Anyways, where were we talking? Oh yeah, so the king being the spirit of the land, right? I think, or the spirit of the people. And do you think? I'm trying to think of a way to phrase it. Like, do kings have a unique power that other people don't?
I think so.
And Okay, let's say we want a monarchy in Canada, right? Okay. What do we do?
We have one.
Right, let's say we... Okay, not Canada then. Let's pick the United States. The United States decides a monarchy is the correct decision.
I'll let them come crawling back.
No, they don't want to come back. Okay.
Then they can't have the monarchy, I'm afraid.
But you said monarchy's like good, right? So the United States is like, yeah, monarchy's good. Let's have a monarchy. We're not British anymore. We can't have a British monarchy. It doesn't work for whatever reason. But kings have a special power. So who do you go to get this special, like, is it the person who takes the reins and then they are the one with the special power? Like a Julius Caesar type figure?
Washington didn't want to be king.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we were talking about long term, and I do think that there has been democracies with long term views, basically. Yeah. Like Washington.
Why didn't Washington want to be king?
Because he thought, well, I don't know, actually. That would be very interesting for this conversation. Like, I know that he thought monarchies was a bad idea, but I don't know why.
Other people wanted him to be king.
Mm-hmm. But he was like, no, that was the whole point of the war, was to not have a king. And I think he thought, like, yeah, I don't know, that would be really interesting.
And so he did his damnedest to try to make a country work without a king. He had the most intelligent people he knew of around him to help him do that.
Well, it's kind of the other way around, right? Like, they made the democracy, and then he became the president, and then they wanted him to be king, I think was the order of operations. Because he was just a general during, like, the war, right? He wasn't even the leader. There was the council of whatever was the leader. Yeah. He was just their top general. He was like the Secretary of Defense or whatever the role was back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Washington's writings would be really interesting on this, because if you need someone like the prime anti-monarchy thinkers, it would be the founding fathers of the United States, right? Those would be the guys to go to.
Well, I don't think even all of them were anti-monarchy. I think it was mostly just him.
I don't know. Socrates was a fairly forward-thinking Democrat. The democracy killed him, but he didn't defect to Sparta or anything. He was like, no, I believe in this. It's just you gotta listen to your people, actually.
The king's also easier to blame. The king doesn't get to leave.
Well, like Pedro fled to Brazil, right? I think it was Pedro the First, maybe fled to Brazil, and like monarchs fled to other countries all the time. That was the thing they did, right? It was like,
and you knew who was going to be king afterwards.
Yeah,
it is the equivalent of them dying.
Yeah, but it's like prime minister. You know, oh, the vice president's in charge, or the deputy prime minister. Or...
We have a better option. We can choose the conservatives. We can choose the liberals after the conservatives. You can choose the liberals. And it's the whole thing of one's at your rear, one's at your face, both sodomizing you, and we don't want to be sodomized in the rear anymore, so they run around you in a circle, high five, and start the game all over again.
Okay, do you think...
And we have the illusion that it's better by switching from one to the other.
Okay.
But there is no illusion, there is no lies with the king. You have a mad crackpot that you're going to have to tell your barons to kill. But no, we're in a civilized democracy. We can vote our way out of it because we're a civilized democracy. So we're going to vote for the idiot wearing a different hat.
Do you think
the same idiot?
This is a case of the grass is greener on the other side? Like, democracies have a huge amount of flaws, and there is a lot of terrible...
That's what I'm trying to go through here. Why do I like monarchy better than democracy? Why do I think democracy flawed? I'm trying to piece this out. I'm thinking, why do I believe one thing or other? Is it the grass is greener on the other side? Because there's a lot of horrible things that have happened under monarchy. I'm well aware of what's happened under monarchy.
Because you can't dismiss the best democracies and best prime ministers and presidents and then hand wave away all the mad kings. And,
no, you cannot.
And kings that bankrupt their country. And like Louis XIV was amazing in his time. He was possibly one of the greatest rulers ever. But the system he set up was impossible if you didn't have his charisma.
Yeah.
So that he lacked foresight. Like the moment his term ended, the country fell apart and they had the worst revolution anyone's seen outside of like China and, well, a lot of places. But, you know, like the French Revolution, the Reign of Terror.
And even what I was saying about all the lies and conniving, that happens in monarchies. Like there's the Duke of York planning to kill his brother to take power.
Yeah, I mean, that's classic. That's Crusader Kings made a game around that. Yeah.
But it's still kind of, like, it might be grass is greener, it's still kind of honest, though, because...
Like, when Alexander the Great came into power, he killed all his siblings because he didn't want other claimants on the throne.
Yeah, that's honest.
You know, it's nice to... Well, no, they weren't honest. They would poison each other and stab them.
No, that's still honest. You know where you are. You know there's going to be murder and death. Where it's like, no, we're in a democracy. And a democracy, we get to choose.
Have you seen Citizen Kane?
No.
Okay, so like that has a classic corrupt politician in it, where he goes and he threatens to expose an affair, Kane's affair with this woman, and he's like, "Look, I'm old school. I got no morals. I'm going to, it's honest. He's just he's a gangster trying to take over the mayorship, right? Like, so you could say it's the same thing because that's basically what
No,
that's what the Macedonians were. They were gangsters.
It's different.
Now, what you seem to be complaining more about the messaging to the people being that, democracy, because democracy is not.
It's the soul of the thing.
But they're like gangster. That's soul. You got democracy is a bunch of shady deals.
It's not about cool or shady deals. It's about one. You know where you're standing. One tells you that someone is in charge. The other tells you you get to choose who's in charge, but you don't. Really.
No. One tells you that God is running your country.
Yeah.
And the king is the conduit for God.
Yes.
And the king, even if he does stuff that is against God, the priests will lie to your face and tell you that is God's will. How dare they?
And yet the barons can disagree.
Yeah, and you can disagree when people tell you that democracy is about the people having the power and you can just vote someone out. And you could, if you look at democracy like it's like this gangster thing where you don't really have that much power. And it's more about complaining loud enough that a rich person hears you and then puts the thumb screws to the politicians and then they get it done. You need to create... Then you're like, oh, that's honest. All you have to do is make a piece of art that convinces the rich people, the barons, to put the pressure on the politicians, the king, and change things. And I don't think if you're living in a monarchy, you're going to be getting this refreshing honesty. It's going to be Liechtenstein might be an exception, but most monarchies are going to be like, oh yeah, I have God is telling me to do this, and I am better than you because of my birth and my blood and my
The king isn't better than you.
No, but he will tell you he is.
No, he doesn't. That's
that. Louis XIV had 200 people help him get dressed for.
Yeah, and he was a French monarch.
Yeah, that's a monarchy in France.
Yeah, no, the British monarch wasn't better than the people. He was the servant of the people.
He was until they had a massive revolution. He was so bad, the Magna Carta had to be written.
Yes, and that's why I'm talking. The Magna Carta.
Yeah, so a better system was added eventually, and then you had this amazing constitutional monarchy, which we still have today.
We don't, though.
I mean, it's still, the Magna Carta is still in effect, as far as I'm aware. It's not like it's being
superseded quite often.
Well, no, it's Magna Carta, right? You don't have, nobody has authority over, nobody's above the law, right?
Yeah. And that's how you make monarchy work. And so we
could have gone too far in one direction. We need to move a bit more back towards the King, yes. King John times.
Yeah. I think we need to move back.
What's that? Reactionary. Yeah, that's the...
Or not even move back. We just need to not keep going the way we're going.
But which way?
We cannot go back.
Which way are we going? Because this comes again to democracy is inherently flawed, right? And so it's like, okay...
The problem with democracy is it slows down the chance for revolution because you feel like you can vote your way out of it.
There's Dan Carlin.
Yeah, he said, so you want a revolution.
Yeah. And who said it? Everyone wants a civil war until they're in one or something? Was that or everyone wants a revolution until they're in one? It's like... Now, there is the risk of being idle, right? The people are tame, they won't do anything, and you can do whatever you want to them. And you don't want politicians to feel like they can get away with everything, right? Like Tsar Nicholas, you don't want... but then look what happened to Tsar Nicholas, or look what happened to Louis the 16th, was it? The people spoke up. So you're like, that's monarchy working. But then what happened was they put in a democracy. Well, communism and then
monarchy. That's not right. I don't know. Don't put words in my mouth.
What words did I put in your mouth?
Yeah, that's monarchy working when they kill the guy. That's not the point.
Well, that seemed to be what you're getting at.
Yeah, it's not.
Okay. Now, I think there's something that you could argue. I don't know if this is your position, but if you believed in the divine right of kings and you believe in God, then you could argue simply that kings are better than us, or are... maybe not better, but are divinely imbued to be better rulers, and democracy is going against the will of God or a natural order of things, in that there is something special about the royal line or the royal blood that makes them, on average, better rulers.
Okay, I have it.
Okay.
A good king is greater than any good president can ever be. A bad king is more terrible than a bad president can ever be. Ergo sum, I like monarchy more. The larger the wheel, the larger the yin-yang, the better it is.
So, would you rather live on a planet you get hit by a comet every day, or on one where every million years you get hit by a comet the size of the planet? Like, you can survive a Trudeau or some corrupt idiot or like a Watergate scandal, but a Nero or a Caligula will end your country, right? Like,
yeah.
So, and a little annoying thing every day is actually something you can shrug off without even noticing it, right? Now, one might be less adventurous, and I think that's an argument. But I think
you can cut off Nero's head and burn him.
Yeah, after he's killed your family.
Yeah.
Instead of, or you can have Trudeau come in and like lightly tickle you every day, and you're just you're like, but whatever.
It's not always Nero. There is also Augustus.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is that if this is your oscillation, right? If it dips below a point of annihilation, it's not useful to have.
Yeah, and so you do have to mitigate the oscillation.
Yeah, which is what democracy is.
And we have mitigated it to the far too much.
So you think you need to just step it up a little bit.
We need more chaos.
Or more potential.
Yes.
Yeah.
We need larger oscillations.
Like, I mean, Trudeau tried, right? Like, he enacted the Emergency Measures Act. Like, do you think that's a good thing?
No.
But that's him actually becoming more of a dictator, more of a monarch, right?
Dictators aren't good.
I mean, Julius Caesar was a dictator. Like,
let's not... Despots aren't good.
Right, but I don't think Trudeau was a despot when he enacted the act. I think he was being more of a king, right? Like, he was saying, I have more power than you have. Like, he was... Like, it's not like he was going against...
He was being despotic. He was doing things...
But he was acting with more power than is the prime minister supposed to have.
Yes.
Which is what a king is, right? Like, he wasn't necessarily doing anything bad. There's a lot of people that agree that the truckers should have been all locked up, right? Like, so he wasn't actually necessarily doing anything wrong with his actions. The problem was that he had more power than he should.
Some people probably loved being under Nero.
Right, but my point is that the point of a king, I assume you would agree, is that they have more power, and that's what Trudeau did, was take more power.
It's not that they have more power. It's that they have power for longer.
So would you be like imagine a king. Trudeau becomes king of Canada, right? He has all the same power as he has now. Like, he can't just change laws on a whim. He has to go through Senate. It has to pass. Because yeah, you're right. A king doesn't have to be like, I mean, like the British king right now, like our king right now. Yeah. He doesn't have any power at all. Basically, he can use vetoes and he can appoint prime ministers, right? Like that's basically his powers. So you want one with maybe the level of power of a prime minister?
Well, the problem with Trudeau is he can't be ousted from his party.
But a king can't be ousted from his party, right?
Yeah, the barons can oust him.
But I mean, there could be a no confidence vote, and
no, Trudeau can't be ousted from his party.
Right, but he could stop being prime minister. He could stop being a threat. Like, they just have a no confidence vote and he's gone, right?
That has to be the democratic system of no confidence. But his own party, which is what would be the barons in this case, can't actually get rid of him. There's no system in Canada to get rid of Trudeau besides non-confidence.
Right, because our parties don't exist, I think?
No, our parties do. One of the prerequisites for Trudeau coming into power under the party is he got rid of the ability for them to get rid of him.
Okay, but we can still, like, have a rebellion and kill him. Like, isn't that you're saying that's the honest advantage of monarchy to a degree, right?
No, that's not.
Like, his party members can still kill him.
That's not what's good about democracy.
Like, how do barons oust a king? Do they say, "Hey, can you please step down"? They hold him at sword point, right?
Yes.
With Magna Carta, they're like, you sign this or you die.
Yes.
So they could still do that with Trudeau.
Yeah.
They could hold Trudeau at sword point and say, "Hey, you step down or we kill you."
The difference with that, though, is the police would come in because the absolute law is under Trudeau.
Right, but that's true of the king as well.
No, it's not, because the barons have the armies. The barons have the law. They are the judges.
Right, but then you could say the police chiefs have the police, and the heads of the RCMP have the law.
Bureaucracy.
But like the RCMP, they could hold Trudeau at sword point because they have the armies, as it were, or the military leaders. We could have a military coup. They could hold them at, like, we still have the potential, right?
Sure.
But that would be bad. Like, it would be a...
Yeah, it'd be bad.
The reason you don't think... I think the reason... No, I could be wrong here. But I think the reason you don't see that as the same possibility is because that would be a disaster that would break all the norms and it would cause chaos. But the barons going against the king is the same thing. It causes massive chaos. It's not like it's your everyday thing where the kings hold the king at sword point. It's not like, oh yeah, oh, hey John, hey, yep, holding me at sword point again. It's too...
No, it works. It does work. If we make Trudeau king, we also have to let him know, though, that he can be held at sword point. A sword is so you don't have to kill someone.
Yeah, so, but we can give, like...
Yeah, no, we can give swords to the barons, yes. We can give swords to the party.
I mean, there's a
Trudeau
dude...
can be king and we can give swords to the party.
I mean, we don't even have to give them weapons. There's a dude with a giant mace in the... He's already got one.
Yeah.
He could squish Trudeau with his big mace.
Yeah. But we have to let him know that he can be squished by the mace.
I mean, King John wasn't told. He was just like, oh, wait a minute.
King John is the start of the whole bloody process, you dingo.
No, but you're taking, like, an idealized perfect monarchy that has all the little things you want and then saying this is better than all the democracies that had to make compromises because...
It is because we worked it out. It is a system that worked.
Yeah, and then we worked out an even more one.
No, we didn't. Because the worm always turns. It always rots. The barons got more power. You appoint ministers. The ministers go, hey, I like having power. Let's take a little bit of power here. Let's take a little bit of power there. Let's get rid of the system because we want to have it under our charge. And then, oh, we don't need this monarch anymore because the monarch is a thing in the past because the barons run it better. And so you destroy Chesterton's fence because you think you know better. And so, while the system is good, it does so the thing that monarchy does without the Magna Carta is it stops the king from slowly being edged out. That's the poison of the Magna Carta is the king can be edged out. And so the system always has to keep moving. I think overall the Magna Carta was better than no Magna Carta, but we have to be aware of its venom. So it can be acted accordingly too.
It's like the poison of the Magna Carta and the crimes of Jesus against humanity.
No, there's no crimes of Jesus.
Well, I mean, he actually broke quite a few laws. But
not against humanity.
Yeah, but it's like it's just a funny line, the poison of the Magna Carta. It's like, here's what the West considers to be possibly the greatest document.
Yeah, it is.
Ever created by...
No, it is. And there is risk with everything. There is risk with change or doing something differently.
Like, even the name isn't like the Great Page or something? Or
might be.
It's like the... So, okay, so let's go back to... So the problem with democracy is that... Now, you said this was a means, I believe, or maybe it was an end, that they don't have any short-sightedness or long-sighted. Or they can be short-sighted and they can be selfish. And we said that's possible in everything, so that isn't one of the problems of democracy. So...
No, it is a problem in democracy. You can't say it's not.
No, it's not an inherent problem of democracy.
Yeah.
Or if it is, it's only in so much as it is an inherent problem with government, right? So the solution isn't changing the government because there isn't a form of government that doesn't have that problem. So
I think democracy promotes it.
More than other systems.
Yes.
Okay. So
I think democracy rewards it, actually.
So the problem with democracy is that it rewards short-sightedness more than other forms of government.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we have a foundation. All right. So the problem with democracy...
No, it's not even that it rewards it more than that. It just rewards it. It's not even more.
Well,
short-sightedness is bad for a kingdom. It is bad for the king.
Then why do so many do it?
Because they're flawed humans.
Then...
But democracy is good to be short-sighted as a politician. It makes you win, and you get the power you want.
So you yourself, sitting here, think that short-sightedness is bad, which means that you think long-sightedness is good, I assume. Which means when you look at a policy like Millet doing the Cutting Inflation Act, well, that's not what it's called, but when you see him doing these short-term painful things that have a possible long-term benefit,
yeah,
you can sit there and say, this is really rough right now, but 10 years from now, this might be amazing for Argentina, right?
Yeah.
So you would maybe vote for Millet if you're like, yeah, this dude, he's looking ahead. Even though he'll only be in power for 5 years, I'm going to vote for him because this is right. Because everyone can do that, right?
Yeah.
Like you're saying that it uniquely rewards the politician for being short-sighted, but it's like, no, I'm not voting for Trudeau. He's short-sighted. I'm going to vote for the long-term dude. I'm going to vote.
Yeah, Millet doesn't come around all that often.
But he does come around.
Yes. It took 100 years and Argentina being awful for a Millet finally to arrive. And There are countries where Malay doesn't show up.
But it wasn't uniquely rewarding him, right? Like, he actually did come around.
Yeah, it's not rewarding Malay because...
No, but it didn't punish him, right? Like,
No, it's not. There's no punishment for it, but there's a reward for being short-sighted.
but he got in without that reward, right?
Yes. He sacrificed the reward of the system. He's going against the system.
Well, wait. So no, I thought the reward was you got elected, if you're short-sighted. So he didn't sacrifice.
It's easier. It's far easier to be short-sighted than long-sighted.
It's easier to get elected if you're short-sighted.
Yes.
Okay.
And you can You can also, while you're elected, you can reap more benefits by being short-sighted.
So the problem with democracy is that it's easier to get elected if you're short-sighted.
And it rewards it.
But the reward is that it's easier to get in.
That's one of the rewards. There's many awards you can get by being short-sighted. You can appear to have done something.
But
in the moment, you can feel the power of doing things and have seen the world change.
Yeah, but Malay's feeling the power of doing things and having them change. He's feeling the rewards of a job well done, and
people hate him.
But people also love him.
Sure.
They do.
Yeah, I'm agreeing. I'm just frustrated with myself. My brain's not working. Yes, the problem with democracy is it rewards short-sightedness.
The problem with democracy is that it's easier to get elected and enrich yourself with short-sightedness than it would be in other forms of government.
Yes. And democracy is based around that. Not based around, but democracy systematically promotes that by its very nature.
Except Malay got in.
You can go against nature.
You said it systematically promotes it, right?
Yeah, it's systematic.
But you said that's in addition to what we already said about the reward and the easier to get in. So that's more than just the easier to get in, because you added an and there.
The way democracy works, democracy rewards short-sightedness by the fundamental way that the system works. Yes, it is more so, it also rewards it more than other things, but monarchy does not reward short-sightedness. The system of monarchy does not promote short-sightedness. Neither does fascism. Fascism has its own flaws, but fascism does not promote short-sightedness. Now, you can get benefits in the short term by being short-sighted, while being a fascist or while being a monarch. But their systems do not promote that.
So when Commodus was fighting in the arena, having the time of his life and bankrupting Rome while doing so, how was he not being rewarded?
The system did not promote that. That was Commodus himself. Commodus was the emperor, and he was short-sighted.
But couldn't you say that the system itself promoted it because it gives you so much power that you're able to do that, and therefore, how could you blame any young man for wanting to live his dreams of being Hercules? Like, the system promoted it.
Power corrupts in many different ways. One of the ways power can corrupt is with short-sightedness.
Yeah.
But it is the problem with monarchy or impure empire, we'll just say monarchy.
Yeah.
The problem with monarchy is it has absolute power. That's the problem with monarchy, is it has absolute power. And absolute power can corrupt, and there's many different forms of corruption. The problem with democracy is it promotes short-sightedness by its very system. And one of the things you cannot have with a government is short-sightedness. A system based around short-sightedness.
So are you making a distinction between corruption and short-sightedness?
We have a room. We have two rooms. We have the democracy room.
Yeah.
And we have the monarchy room. We'll use monarchy in this case. We could use fascists as well. Fascists going to have some things. All right. So, the monarchy room has a group of people in a line, and there's a door at the other end. So, the monarch walks up to the door, and they go through the door, and that's that. And then the door closes. Then the door opens again, and another monarch walks through the door, and they're in the line. Now, while they're in the line, their backs down, they're squabbling, they're killing each other to try to get ahead in the queue. There is corruption within that system. But the system, monarchy, is you stand in a line, and you wait your turn, and then you go through the door. That is what monarchy is. Democracy, you have a room full of people. There's a lot more people in this room. And you have a door, and I'm really torturing this analogy. Or I thought the analogy would work, but now I can't figure out a way to conclude it.
And in front of the door is a guard who always lies and one who always tells the...
No, don't. Please, don't dissemble me or whatever word is. Distract. This is why I usually let you do this instead of me and make those comments.
There's a bunch of people pressing to get into the door rather than forming a line. They're just all squabbling and trying to...
They are doing that, but also...
You don't know who's going to win. You don't see the line.
No, it's not that. That's not the thing. So let's go back to the monarchy. I think I need to go back to the monarchy line.
Okay.
So, you got a little velvet rope in front of the door. And, yeah, they're killing each other and they're, like, trying to jump the line or whatever. And sometimes, like, two people are standing next to each other. So I'm in front. Don't I'm in front. And then they fight each other for who's in front. But you still always obey the rules of the line, even if you're, like, shifting, pushing around. You're still in the line. And whoever's at the front when the door's open is at the front. And if there's two people, then maybe one of them has to stab each other to get through. Or have all the other guys in the line grab him so he can go through the door. But this system is based around queuing in a line. So I'll say the system itself is very straightforward. The things that go on in the system of trying to get there or whatever, there's a whole bunch of problems going on. But the system is what is. I don't even know if that's the right way to put it. The thing about the democracy door. Okay, so yeah, the democracy door, it doesn't have a line. It is a press of people. And there is a guy standing there with a clipboard. It's got a list of questions. And people are fighting and pressing, trying to get to him. So they're trying to get to this guy. And if you can get to him through the press of people, he then asks you, all right, so... No, he doesn't have a clipboard. This guy has a table in front of him. It's got 2 marshmallows on it.
Okay.
Right. And so you fight your way through and you get to this guy. And so you're at the front of the pack. Okay, there's 2 sets of doors. and so there's a bunch of people fighting to get through the first door.
Yeah.
And every 4 years this door opens. And so the door opens. And they're fighting, squabbling, and one guy gets through. And he gets to the guy with a plate of marshmallows. And the guy says, all right, so you can take this marshmallow now, and you can head through that door. Or you can go back through the door you ran through. And if you get through the press again, you can take both marshmallows and go through that door. And that's the problem with democracy, is you take the 1 marshmallow and go through the door.
Problem with democracy. So how do you get the 2 marshmallows again?
You have to turn around and head back through and then fight through that press again, wait 4 years, then charge through again and grab both. And so on the monarchy side, there's those 2 doors as well, but there's no guy. You just take both marshmallows and you walk through. We don't need that for a monarchy, though. It doesn't matter for a monarchy. We're just concerned with democracy.
So could you say that... I'm not sure I understand it. I'm going to try to figure it out. So...
Why is there always food with us? Sandwich.
I don't even like food analogies. It's actually quite common to do food analogies.
Yeah.
For some... I guess it's because it's a very important thing to people, right?
Yeah, well, and the marshmallow problem's known.
But marshmallows aren't really food, to be fair.
Yeah, but the marshmallow problem's well known.
But, okay, so... I don't really understand what you're getting at with that, but maybe if there was like a... Let's say every time you win the prime minister position, you're offered... You can be prime minister, or you can have $1 million. And I think what you're saying, though, is that what happens is you can have $500,000 and have a ton of power.
No. What I'm saying is the system of democracy is it promotes short-sightedness. Okay, so I need to do something else to the room. I need to do something to both rooms. I need to do something else to both rooms. So, both rooms have 100 people in them. Everyone in the rooms are immortal.
Yeah.
So, in monarchy, you have a line, and you walk through the door. And people push and shove. Like, they're immortal, but they can get stabbed, like political commission. Yeah. They'll heal after time. And so it's the same thing. Now, you go through the one door, you go into the next room, and there's a plate with 2 marshmallows. There's no guy in there. You take the marshmallows, and you go through. Now, in the democracy room, there's 100 people. They're all immortal. And...
in the democracy room, there's 100 people, again.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're all immortal.
Okay.
And they just fight each other. There's no line. They just fight each other.
Okay.
Or they could play a complex game of... werewolf,
yeah,
if you like. There's so many different ways. So let's give democracy its due. So instead of having a line where you fight and kill each other, you have 100 people.
Yeah.
And they have to convince each other who should go first. Because this is the democracy room. So someone has to justify why they get to go to the door. And so they've justified why they get to the door opens, they go through. And then they have a plate with 2 marshmallows. And there's a guy there saying, you can take one and you can go through now. Or you can head back into the room and convince everyone again. Then you can come back into here and take 2 marshmallows and then you can go through.
Yeah. They're like, well, that was a 1% chance that I got here in the first place. So I'm not going to try to wrangle them again. I'm just going to take the 1 marshmallow and go. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
The system on the side of democracy, it is advantageous to be short-sighted. It is to your advantage to be short-sighted.
But why is that different from monarchy again?
Because the monarchy just takes both marshmallows and walks through.
But what's the real world equivalent of that in like the monarch?
The system of democracy, as we said earlier, is that you tell the people, I will get that 1 marshmallow and I'll get through there and I'll be the minister. And it's like, well, he got the 1 marshmallow through. It's the short-sighted. It's to your advantage to be short-sighted in democracy. Especially if there's multiple times you can get elected. It's like, all right, well, I got this done, this done, this done, this done. These are all 4-year projects. But maybe your country really needs an 8-year project. But the 8-year project isn't what's going to get you elected. The system is advantageous to have the 4-year project. That is the flaw of democracy.
But how is that different from monarchy? Like with a monarchy, again, we talked about communists.
Because the system...
Yeah, you keep saying that.
No, but that's the whole point!
Right, but my argument is that... Here, I can do it too. The system of monarchy is inherently short-sighted.
How?
Because the system of monarchy...
Alright, the system of democracy is inherently short-sighted because it promotes, it's advantageous, is to your advantage to be short-sighted.
Yeah, the system of monarchy is
inherently short-sighted. No, it's not to your advantage. It's not to your advantage.
It is inherently...
It is not to your advantage. I've explained... I feel like I'm going mad. I feel like I've explained why it's advantageous to be short-sighted in democracy, and it seems to look poor...
No, but you are just saying the same thing. You're making a tautological argument.
Okay, it is advantageous to be short-sighted in democracy because it is easier to win by being short-sighted. In democracy, you have won.
No, in monarchy, you have won.
Yeah, in monarchy, you have won.
Yes.
After you've won, maybe you will be short-sighted, maybe you'll be long-sighted. But in monarchy, you have won.
Yeah, so...
There is no advantage to being short-sighted to become the monarch.
Not in order to become the monarch, no.
Yeah.
No.
That the system of monarchy is you have won. I'm not talking about the ends. I'm talking about the means.
Okay, so...
The means of democracy...
So, okay, I think I know what you're saying. What you're saying is that if you want to become the leader of a democratic country, you should be short-sighted in order to gain power.
Yes.
To become the leader of a monarchy, it's irrelevant.
Yes.
You just become the leader or you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no... Okay, now then, let's go to the... I don't quite agree with that, but I see what you're getting at now, I think. Because, for instance, you've got the greatest ruler ever... Claudius is a great example, actually. I think that was his name, right? Was it Claudius? Or... No, Claudius actually succeeded, possibly. Anyways, we'll have a hypothetical then, because I'm not sure about the exact stuff. So, you have this amazing leader who's coming up, right? He's going to be the greatest leader ever. And his younger brother's like, no, I want to be leader. So, the short-sighted... So, it's beneficial to be short-sighted in killing the greatest ruler ever for you to gain power.
For you.
Yeah. You're being short-sighted for the entire country you're being short-sighted for your own benefit.
For your own benefit, yes. Yes, it is about you. Democracy, you have monarchy. This is the line to the crown. So you have a line, that's the line to the crown. It is infinitely thin. You have the crown. He killed his brother. He is now the monarch.
Yeah.
He's next in line.
Yeah, the system...
Selfishly... No, shut up. Just shut up. There is a binary. You are king or you are not king. You have the crown or you do not have crown. He short-sightedly killed his brother on the side of no crown. He then goes over, he has crown, he is a short-sighted ruler. At no point did the line make it... At no point was the line about being short-sighted.
Because the system rewarded his short-sightedness by making him king.
Okay, yes, the system rewarded him for being short-sighted. A parallel universe. He plots against his brother for being short-sighted. He gets murdered. In return, he is punished for being short-sighted.
Yes.
It's a 50-50.
Well, we don't know what the odds are, but...
It's a 50-50 in a vacuum where everything's a sphere where there's no gravity.
Okay, a guy ran against Malay, and he banked on being short-sighted and keeps the spending party going. But he lost against Malay. It was a 50-50.
No, it was not. Because... So, Malay, for not being short-sighted, picked up a handicap. And despite the handicap, he overcame it. Because that's just how damn good he was.
See, that sounds like cheating right there. Like, not Malay cheating. That sounds like you're cheating.
I'm saying that the system of democracy is predicated and based around being short-sighted.
But I can make the same argument about monarchy. And I can also make an argument against it for democracy.
I have no more words.
All right.
Well, I think we are clearly at an impasse.
I think we can resolve this quite simply, actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw myself as the Chad and you as the Soy Jack. And therefore... you can have sunglasses. There's some very... I've told you Hitler's arguments against democracy, right?
Yeah.
Because he has some very good arguments. So, one of his arguments is that in order to keep a country... In order for a country to... Let's start from the beginning. There will come disasters in a country's life, which it takes a rare genius to overcome. Like, these are existential threats that you need a rare genius to overcome. Now, the definition of a rare genius is one who sees things that no one else sees. That's because it's a rare genius, right? Which means that if you try to vote this guy into power, the people won't recognize his genius.
Stop right there, criminal scum. It's a crime to murder your brother.
Okay. But the system is still encouraging you to make a crime.
No, it is not. Because here's the difference between the two. Well, both of them, it can be to your advantage to be short-sighted. It is legal to be short-sighted in democracy. In the monarchy, it is illegal to be short-sighted and murder your brother. Even if it promotes it, there is a check and balance in place to stop that. Therefore, its system actually stops that short-sightedness. It has a system in place in monarchy to say, no, you do not kill your brother.
Okay, so you get him out through other means. You make his life miserable, you lie to him, you make him break up with his wife, you try to convince him constantly not to be leader. You make it hard for him to sleep. You play loud music at inappropriate times.
By right, he is the king. Even if he does not want to be, he is the king. That is, he is the first in line.
Yeah, so you convince him to step down or kill himself or something.
And then you are a horrible person.
Yeah. You're a horrible person if you are short-sighted as a...
No.
What about, like, Alexander the Great killing his siblings? That wasn't illegal. That was just matter of course, like we said, right? So you want a monarchy that accounts for that by making murder illegal.
Yes.
Yeah. So what about a democracy where short-sightedness is illegal?
Too nebulous.
So is there anything we can do about that? Let's see. You elect people for 40 years. They have one term, like we said before. Then does the system still promote short-sightedness? Yes, because they still want to be elected, so they will promise things to the people, whereas the king doesn't need to promise things to the people.
Yeah.
So the acquisition of power is inherently short-sighted for democracy versus monarchy, where a monarch can be short-sighted and a prime minister can be short-sighted, but before that, the acquisition of power, a king is not short-sighted in a legal acquisition of their power.
Yes.
But, okay, we'll go with that for now. So then let's say...
No, I'm happy with that. I don't think we need to do any more than that.
Well, the question then is, does it matter? Like, let's say democracies are all peaceful and they've had the least wars of any form of government, and...
if you're watching Age of Empires, would you rather watch Hera or Doubt win?
Probably Doubt.
Yeah.
But I would rather be on Hera's team.
Yes.
And I think,
and
it's exciting to read about the 7 Years' War and the 20 Years' War and the War of Jenkins' Ear and the 100 Years' War. But it's a lot nicer to be in a time when Europe isn't a hell pit.
We don't know if it would be a hell pit or not with Marx right now. There might have been other changes besides that may help.
Yeah, I think so. And we don't know if democracy is the reason that there is international conflict, or like,
Yeah.
like you seem, I could be wrong, but you seem dissatisfied with the state of things if you're looking to the government as the flaw of the cause. But it could just be that you think that there's a moral problem with democracy, and it would be better to have, even if the outcomes of democracy were lesser, it would be better to have a moral system like monarchy, let's say, than democracy in place simply on a ethical basis, right?
Yes, that is what I've concluded. Like, this whole thing's actually been very useful to me in that final bit there. Like, this final part has been very useful to me. It is about the moral.
So it is about the means and not the end, then.
Yeah, it's about the means.
Right. So do you think there is a moral component then to short-sightedness versus long-term planning? Or no, what would it be? Because if it's the system doing the behavior and not the person, is the person to blame? Because you can still...
You can be blamed for playing the game.
Yeah, okay, so you know the story of the Inquisitor and Jesus, right?
Yeah.
So the Inquisitor says freedom destroys people, and you go into the desert and you starve and you fall apart, right? And you die, and I have been through the desert and you have been through the desert, but the people can't handle it. Like, it would be torture to them, right? And so democracy allows for corruption, where maybe monarchy doesn't in this system, right? But should we take away that option of corruption from people? Or should we be the Inquisitor and make sure that there is no room for people to be short-sighted? There's no room for the malaise to shine through and, despite everything, be these shiny beacons? Or should we be...
I think we can allow for it without doing sin to begin with.
And the sin is...
The system that is democracy.
No, but if God allowed sin to be possible, right?
Yeah.
Democracy allows sin to be possible. It doesn't mean that democracy is sinful or God is sinful.
No, monarchy allows for sin to happen too. It's what soil does it grow in? The Bible's brilliant.
Well, the Bible is concerned with the ends, though, isn't it? Like, by the fruits you shall know them, right? So if the system produces a good result...
So, one of the anecdotes Jesus told is a guy's throwing seeds into the dirt. And he throws seeds into hard ground, and they do not grow. And he throws seeds into a bramble patch, and they grow, but then they get strangled by the brambles. And then he throws seeds into shallow dirt, and they grow quickly, and then the soil blows away and they die. And he throws some seeds into nice, lush, dark soil, and they grow bountiful 10 times the normal harvest. And so it's where you sow the seeds that's important.
And by your fruits you shall know them, right? Like, that's the... And so let's say I think United States is the greatest country that ever existed. I'm like, look at that. That must be some real fertile soil, because the United States is just, oh boy.
Throwing the seeds into shallow soil can produce growth. And maybe the wind just doesn't blow. Maybe it works out. I guess what I'm trying to say, the analogy seemed to work in my head, maybe it doesn't. It seemed to give me a moment of light, I don't know.
Well, maybe what you're saying instead then is just that look for fertile soil first and all else will follow. And you don't believe that democracy is the fertile soil because it has this inherent flaw or something like that.
Maybe, yeah. It's the starting in sin, even if the ends are good. It's the start in sin. And the start in sin makes it more likely for sin to continue.
But...
Like, so a man's a criminal, right? Like, you remember The Gentleman?
Yeah.
How he's like trying to go legitimate and like do all those things, and he started out as a criminal. He had to kill people, and like you look at the organization he's built and all the things with it, and like you could say he's a good man. It's worked out, but the way he started is he was a murderer and a drug peddler,
but I think
it wasn't a good start. And by the starts, it is not good.
But I think my argument is that it's not inherently sinful just because there's room for sin. And in fact, the room for sin might be necessary.
Maybe.
Like the Inquisitor and Jesus story, right? Like the Inquisitor says, we will lead them, we will give them bread, and they will be happy, and they will follow the correct path. Versus going to a desert where you can die, and die in this case is sin, right? You can go off the path. It's kind of like freedom isn't necessary evil. It's the same idea, I think. Like choice.
Do you still have freedom with a king? However, the king takes all the sin for himself.
It could be, but that's I think that's the problem. You should let people. Well, no, maybe that's too fast. Well, Well, let's just say that's true for a moment. You could have a king that takes the burden of sin onto himself. I mean, that's Jesus. Or is it Jesus? What? So Jesus died for this to redeem the sins of the world.
Can I tell you the story of Jesus?
I get okay.
It's kind of epic. So, Noah gave his commandments, and they're pretty hard to follow. Like, you go through the commandments, they're actually kind of hard to follow. Like, you can be a good person, but there's some things in there that are just like...
My neighbor is ox, man.
The list of commandments is long, and you can mess up. There's temptation you can mess up. And there's more commandments and laws beyond that are pretty hard to follow. And there's, like, outside the Bible, there's a whole bunch of rules that the Hebrews and Israelites and the Jewish people together, like, they kept adding rules and more rules. And,
is this going to be the whole, like, Jesus had a baby with the furry unicorn or whatever?
No. I don't even know what that is.
Remember, it's like, love each other as I have loved you? And, like, he was really into furries or something? Or...
No. That's not what this is about at all. So, then Jesus comes along after all this happens. And I listened... So, the first chapter of the New Testament has his Sermon on the Mount. And he gives out people more rules which are hard to follow. And he says this is for everyone, these rules. They're not just for the Jewish people. These are rules for everyone to follow. And if you don't follow them, you will go to hell, basically. You are a sinner, you'll go to hell. The only way to heaven is to follow these rules. And while Jesus is in the land and teaching, he heals people and says, don't talk of what I did. He heals a blind man. And he says, don't tell anyone that I did this. And the blind man goes and tells people he did that. And so Jesus has to heal a whole bunch more people. And there's a leper. And he's like, don't tell anyone that I healed you. And then the leper tells people that he healed them. So he heals more people. And he has to travel and flee from place to place. And he's trying to give these rules and laws. And he studied, like, the rules of the Jewish people really, really hard. And he's quite knowledgeable in them. And so he went into a synagogue during the Sabbath. And the Pharisees are there watching him, trying to basically see if he messes up, so that they can persecute him for not being a good Jew. They want to see if he'll break the law. And a leper or sick man, or a leper or sick man, or as a man with a withered hand comes into the temple. And he asks Jesus to heal him. And all the Pharisees are basically like, they're salivating, like how he's going to break the rules. And Jesus heals the guy. Like, oh, you worked on the Sabbath. And Jesus says, I did good on the Sabbath. Is it wrong to do good on the Sabbath? Why are these rules here? What's the whole deal with them? And so basically Jesus, over his lifespan, he's on earth, he's talking with all these people, he's trying to give them these new rules, and he sees that they can't follow the rules, and they're just, a lot of people are out to get at him. A lot of people love him, a lot of people are out to get him. And so he has the Last Supper. Like, if all the other things happen, like the temptations, the trials, all that, he has the Last Supper. And after the Last Supper, he goes out and he tells, 3 of his disciples come with him. One of them's Peter. And he says to them, I'm going to go pray in this field. And it's night out. I need you 3 guys to sit by the fire, stay awake, keep watch for me. Can you do that? I was like, yep, we'll stay awake, we'll keep watch for me. So, okay. He goes out in the field and he begs God, I don't want to die. Oh, Father, why have you forsaken me? There has to be another way to do this. Like, can't we do it any other way than me dying? And he's out there just crying and begging. And then he goes back to the fire where his 3 best friends are. These are the greatest of his disciples. And they're asleep at the fire. So he wakes them up. It's like, why'd you guys go to sleep? I told you to stay awake and keep watch. All right, can you please stay awake and keep watch? I'm going to go pray again. I have to do this. And they're like, okay, we'll stay awake. We'll stay awake this time. He goes, and again, he argues with God. He argues that what he's going to do isn't necessary. He lays his soul out to God. And then he's done, and he goes back, and they're asleep again at the fire. And he wakes up and is like, okay, guys, I fell asleep again. I told you to stay awake. I don't know why you did this, but can you please just stay awake? I'm going to go pray one more time. Then we can be done with this whole thing. And the guy's all right, we'll stay awake. So Jesus goes out, and he's praying again. And he comes back, and the 3rd time they're asleep. And as he comes back, Judas Iscariot and the Romans show up. And Judas walks over to Jesus and kisses him. And so the Romans know to capture him. And Jesus did his whole thing about telling how not one of you will stand by me. You'll all betray me before the end. Not one of you will defend me. None of them do. But when he comes back the 3rd time, Jesus realizes that he has to go through with this because not even the 3 guys he asked to stay awake for him can do what he requested. And like all the time, he realizes that people sin. Not one person is without sin, is what Jesus comes to realize through this whole thing. This whole trial he's been through, the whole story of his life, is he's trying to make it so people can live by God so they don't go to hell, so they can, not even so they don't go to hell. Jesus actually doesn't care about people going to hell. He wants them to go to heaven. So he's trying to tell people how to get to heaven. And he realizes no one can get to heaven. And so he goes, okay, everyone has sinned. And if you sinned, you can't get to heaven. So I will take every single sin there is. And I will die with every sin within me. And by doing this, everyone can go to heaven. Everyone ever, of any nation, past or present or future, I will take their sin and I will die because it is too hard. They're not capable. They're mortal. They will sin. They are born to sin. Sin is what they are. And so he goes and he dies on the cross. And a lot of people then go on about the resurrection and various other things, but that's not what concerns me. Is he took it all. He died.
What does that... I don't know what that means. What does it mean to take sin?
He absolved it. He forgave them. He said, it's okay.
And why?
I'm here. I can shoulder this burden now.
And why did he need to die?
Well, it's all well and good to say, yeah, I'll take these for you. But he took the final step. He gave everything.
No, but it's like, if taking sin means to forgive, then he can forgive without dying.
He took those sins, so he did the sin. He took it from you.
So it isn't forgiving.
No, he forgave you for having to take the sin, but he took them.
No, but what does it mean to take them then, if it doesn't mean to forgive? Like, is a sin an object that, like...
In a way, yeah, and he took that object.
Like like a stain on your soul?
Yeah.
And he took all the stains. And what is...
And he took every single stain on the soul, and he put it onto his own soul. And then he died with them, and destroyed all of them.
Isn't that just kind of ripping off, like, Ictavan or whatever from Malazan Book of the Fallen?
Why do you think that's a repeated story? It's because it's the most amazing, epic thing someone's ever done.
Is it? Like,
yeah.
But it's like... Maybe this explains something about the whole Denethor thing. Like, it's just kind of... You can just, like, say things, right? Like my character, John, he took on all the pain so that no one will ever have to be in pain again. And so he felt all the pain there was. And he was like, yeah, that hurts. It's like falling off my bike, like, twice. And then he...
Well, why does no one care about your story that you just said, but people care about Jesus' story?
Well, maybe they should care.
Should they care about your worthless, meaningless, boring story that has no commitment, that is made in mockery of something else?
It's not in mockery at all. It's like, I thought the Jesus story was kind of boring. Like, it's a nice idea. It's like anime, right? It's a nice idea, but it's like the rest of it matters, right? Like the bit about them falling asleep. It's like, yeah, okay, that part's deep, right? Like, it's like, even these people I rely on most can't stay awake when I need them to. Obviously, everyone has the potential for failure in them. Like, everyone can fail. So that's deep. But it's like, and with the Pharisees, you know, you didn't get into it, but in the actual story, it's quite clever, the things he does, right? Like, he very cleverly overcomes all their challenges. Like, they have one thing where they say, should this money go to Caesar or to God? Because you have to pay a tithe to God, but you also have to pay a tithe to Caesar. And Jesus says, like, well, you know, render unto God what is God's, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. It's quite like a little clever, like, give each as they deserve.
Whose face is on the coin?
Yeah, whose face is on the coin. Give Augustus his property back, you know. But
It wasn't Augustus.
during Jesus' day it was.
No, it was a different guy.
Year 0, that was Augustus.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, he has a ton of names, sorry.
Like Augustus Julius Gaius. Well, Gaius Julius Augustus. Sorry, Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus.
There's like a 5th one in there.
But it was like, Jesus wasn't dealing with the emperor, really, right? He was dealing with the local, like, authorities most of the time. But, yeah, I don't know if there was a second emperor in Jesus' life or not. But, yeah, going back to it, so then Jesus dying on the cross, like, you know, he forgives Dismas to his right, and he doesn't forgive the dude to his left. And I'm not sure what that means, but there's probably something there.
That's like extra story stuff. That's not in the original gospel of Paul. Various things.
But then saying, you know, it's to me, it's kind of like saying, you know, Gilgamesh, like, picked up the wall and chucked it. Isn't that like the most incredible feat of strength ever?
Well,
in
then
story?
you can interpret that despite how good of a person is, despite everything he did and believing the best in people and giving them all those chances and doing everything he can and defeating the Pharisees in logic, he still died because of our inequity. So you could look at it as a very, that despite it all, he died.
Well, that's a depressing thought.
Well, no, despite all, he died, but then he came back to life.
Or what about, despite it all, he still took on all the sins. Like,
Yeah.
He still wanted to save everyone.
Yeah, yeah, well, if it's believed that he healed people from all those things, then, like, if we're going to accept that as part of a story, then he chose to die on that cross. Like, from what the devil's tempting him, like, Jesus could have probably escaped.
You know what?
And his argument with God, like, he said, God, I don't want to do this, right? Jesus could have ran away in the night because he knew I was coming. But no, he went ahead with it and died on the cross.
You know what it might be? You know, in like Star Wars sequels, Han Solo like flies through the narrow gap and takes out the bad guys, and he's got an amazing shot, and you're like, yeah, it's Han Solo, right? And Darth Vader is like a super amazing fighter, and he takes out the dudes, right? You're like, oh yeah, that's Darth Vader. Yeah, that's what Darth Vader do. But if you watch the original, you're like, whoa, Han Solo just like his aim's great, and Darth Vader's like this weird old-fashioned priest dude, but he's also got all these actual real powers, and he's very mysterious. And you know, I wonder if it's the problem of like, you know how it ends. So it's like, yeah, of course Jesus can take. His name is Jesus Christ the Redeemer. Of course he redeems people. But you know, if you do it play by play in the moment, you're like, you don't know if he's going to do it or not, and you're like, oh, you're watching like the football commentator, and you're like, and Jesus saves.
No, so let's address it in a different way, because it is so Jesus is arguing with God. I don't want to die.
Yeah,
that is his argument. I don't want to die, and I understand that. That's something I can relate to.
Yeah.
And he has a lot of time for that argument, if like stories believe. Like he even told people at the Last Supper, "I'm going to be betrayed."
Yeah.
So he knows this betrayal is coming. He knows he's being annoyed, taking out the Pharisees. Like, they're trying to trap him out legally. He knows people are upset with him. Jesus can walk on water. That's another thing he's done. This man can walk on water. He can heal people. He can bring people back to life. Or people who are mostly dead back to life. So he has some serious powers. And, like, if you think about it, these powers aren't to be trifled with. And then he lets Judas Iscariot walk up and kiss him.
Yeah.
And he lets the men with swords take him. This is a man who can return sight to the blinded. He can drive out demons just by speaking to them. And he goes, okay, take me. This man, he could have said to his followers, he had hundreds of people following him. He could have said, I'm going to be betrayed. All of you stand in this building and be ready for a siege. Because we're going to be betrayed, we can fight back. He was taken to Pontius Pilate.
Yeah.
And Pilate said to him, so you're the Son of God. Why don't you prove it to me? And if you are, then I will spare you. I'll make it so these people don't kill you. I will give you my pardon. And Jesus didn't do that. So Pontius gave him out, and he didn't take that out. And then they took him to the cross, and they put him on it. And he's Jesus. He's on the cross. It doesn't have to kill him. He could just say ropes unbind themselves, and they'd cut off his arms. Or even if we go only based on the powers that Jesus had, they stick him with the spear, and then it goes, whoom, and it gets healed because he like touches his own hand, it heals. And then he's hungry, and so like a little bit of rain falls on his face, and it turns into a gallon of water, and he can drink it. And so the Romans are just standing around there, and it's like 20 weeks in, and Jesus is still just hanging out on the cross because he's Jesus. The powers that we've seen he can heal anything. But no, he dies. He let himself get taken, let himself be put on the cross, and then he dies. He let it happen to himself.
Yeah. And
why would he do that?
I mean, there's a lot of answers to that. Like, if he was anything like me, so he could be like, yeah, suck it.
But he's not like you. From all the stories and stuff, he's not like that.
Well, because, you see, that's and then the less human answer, but the still human answer is the Socrates, where his demon told him to do it.
Then why did he come back to life afterwards? Was it just to escape the persecution? He could have escaped the persecution by going with Pilate.
No, that's not what Socrates' demon is. Socrates could have escaped.
Yeah.
He didn't have to drink the poison, right? But what he did was, like, his demon was a voice in his head that would talk to him. And he always did what it told him to do. And it told him, stay.
Yeah.
And so he stayed. And like, he basically trusted his gut, even when his gut said, kill yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And it wasn't to stick it to the Athenians because he loved it. He loved Athens, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't a narcissistic suicide.
Yeah.
It wasn't to make a point, because that's the same thing as a narcissistic suicide, really. At least, I mean, maybe that was why Socrates did it, but I think he actually believed in the Athenians enough that he abided by their decision.
Yeah. He told them that I trust you.
Or, right or wrong, I'm with you.
Yeah.
That's not even like, because he thought they were wrong, right?
Yeah.
But
right or wrong, I'm with you, and that's the same as Jesus.
So it's not quite trust. It's almost something else.
Yeah. So that's what Jesus did. Right or wrong, I'm with you.
So
despite all the inequities, despite all the good, this is.
So with Jesus, it's like, it's the same thing, isn't it, though, really? Like, it's Jesus saying, look, this is the craziest situation ever. It's like, everything goes wrong in the most avoidable way if I just take one little half step away from God's plan. I don't even have to betray everything I stand for. I just have to, sleep in one day.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty easy to avoid. Like, it's basically self-destructive. Like, he seeks it out. Like, it's that avoidable. And so it's kind of saying he has ultimate faith in God's plan and is rewarded in the ultimate fashion. I think that's what the resurrection is, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of...
Jesus is also a scapegoat.
But I don't know if it's
like, the line in We Three Kings is God and King and sacrifice. He is a scapegoat. Like, if you want to take the one, just like, you don't have to worry about, like, you shouldn't sin, but if you did, it's okay because Jesus died because of that.
So in context, what are you getting at here? It's that Jesus stuck to the means, and therefore, no, that's we were talking about, means and ends, of course, before. Yeah. But I think there's a lot of...
I don't know about what we were talking about before. I just wanted to talk about Jesus.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't find it...
Don't find anything special?
Not... That's kind of the means versus ends story. I mean, that's a thing in his favor.
You know what's funny? Is when we started this out, I talked about trying to fix democracy, and then we said, what's wrong with democracy? And so I started saying things that are wrong with democracy. And you said, these are things wrong with all the other governmental systems. I never came up with how to fix democracy. Just came up with what's wrong with it.
Well, there's not much point in fixing something if it's not broken, right?
But the same things they're broken with are broken with monarchy, so why not have monarchy?
I mean, why not, I guess? I mean, if it's the same.
But it isn't.
No.
So, when I first listened to that story with Jesus, like, I've known the story's been told multiple different ways, but I actually like listening to the words as written in the New Testament for the first time fully. It messed with my head. Like, just going through the Sermon on the Mount. I didn't understand the Sermon on the Mount. It seemed impossible. It actually seemed impossible. And then the whole thing about him dying and doing what he did, it's like, this is the greatest man that ever lived.
I mean, if you believe in him and that he did all that, and that you don't, if you do believe in him and believe he did all that, you don't deduct points for him being God.
No.
Because I that one always kind of bothers me. Like, is the moral of the story God trusted God's plan? It's like, it's kind of a...
Why would he argue with God?
You have doubts, I guess. So it's, trust yourself, I guess. That's the... It's like, wait a minute, is this a good idea?
See, that's where a difference in denomination comes from. Of, was Jesus God or was Jesus not? And my conclusion is Jesus is a God in mortal form. And that is what he is.
Because I think... I don't know.
Because he is Jesus, son of Mary.
Yeah, but if he's God in mortal form, then he is also God.
Yeah, but mortals are fallible. God can do anything, right? God's all-powerful, right?
Well...
So, okay, if you have an all-powerful God...
Yeah.
Can all-powerful God take away his own power?
Yeah. But it's still kind of like this was self-inflicted, and this was your plan all along. But I don't think...
But if you go through the whole Bible, it's not his plan all along.
But I don't think, like... I'm not going to dismiss the brilliance of the Bible, but like Denethor's whole world-melding scene, it is just kind of like...
Dalinor.
Who's Denethor?
The steward of Gondor.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah, like Dalinor's whole, like, it's It's kind of or like anime in general. I think it's like a beautiful idea, execution needed. Doesn't mean it's not there.
I mean, I probably just explained it poorly.
Well, I've read the Bible, right? Like, you know, and that is like the most famous story from the Bible is Jesus on the cross.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a movie about it.
Yeah.
At least one. They're gonna make a sequel apparently to the Passion of Christ. Like, actually, that's not a joke. They're making Passion of Christ 2.
Anyways, your atheism besides.
Well, do you believe in Jesus as a
Absolutely.
God made flesh?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
You know how you can see art and the art's more real than real, even though it's not realistic?
Yeah. Like, I think you can argue Jesus is true. That doesn't mean that he existed as a god on earth.
The story of the Bible, the story of Jesus, is more true than true.
I mean, yeah, I could agree with that.
And I can't not believe it.
You can't not believe that it's truer than true, or you can't not believe that that he is actually a person that was there.
I cannot not believe the story of the Bible.
Was truer than true, or that he was a person that was
No,
there?
it's truer than true, and because of that, I cannot not believe it. I believe it's truer than true.
Yeah. But is this a statement you agree with? The story from the Bible is truer than true, therefore Jesus was God on earth, actually.
Yes.
And so a story that true had to be based on something, or is it a story that true becomes real?
Both. It did happen. If we want to go multiple angles, he is a recorded person who was executed.
Yeah, but okay, let me put this. Is the story so true that Jesus became God on earth, or is it true because he was already God on earth?
Both. It transcends time. It is not linear.
Okay, but even forget the order of operations then, but was the origin point of the non-linear, I guess it could have been, simultaneous?
Yes.
If I write a story about my guy that takes on all the pain, and it's so fantastically well written, does that man become real? Or, was always real? Or could it only be written to that level if it was based on what was already there?
It could only be written to that level if it is based on what was already there.
Why can't God, who has given a divine spark to everyone, in that divine spark imbue it with the ability to see the spiritual world separate from the material plane?
I'm not certain what you mean.
If God imbued us all with the power, with the knowledge of good and evil, let's say, the divine wisdom, then can't we make up stories that are more powerful than what has occurred on a material realm? Like, we don't need to base our stories on something that happened, and the stories can still be all powerful. Like Lord of the Rings. Ooh, there's a good question. Is Aragon real?
No.
Is Gilgamesh real? Or
Maybe.
is Horus real? Did he fight his uncle and there was a giant
He might have.
cat wrestling a snake and all the...
It might have been stories similar to that. I don't know on those levels. If those are true or not.
And why don't you know if you can just tell with Jesus?
Because it's more true than true.
Right, but wouldn't you just be able to say these stories aren't more true than true, therefore
No, those stories can be true.
Are there other stories that exist that you can also say are truer than true? Like Moses, I guess, or
No, Moses is just true. It's not truer than true.
Isaac,
The only...
Israel wrestling with God.
There's only 3 parts of the Bible that matter to me. The fall, the death, and the words spoken after the resurrection.
The fall of what?
The fall of man.
Like Garden of Eden?
Yes. Humans being a white paisley that eats a piece of black. That's gaining color. Because Adam and Eve had no concept of good and evil. They were but beasts in the garden.
Is Garden of Eden truer than true?
The Garden of Eden's a metaphor for the human soul.
But Jesus isn't?
No, Jesus is the intersection where this spiritual world and the physical world met. You've got, I'm seeing in my head right now. You've got like these two different pieces of cloth, and there's a plaid cloth, and that's the real world, and it's going along in the sewing machine. And you've got like the sort of wispy golden threads, and that's the spiritual world. That's the stories of Gilgamesh. That's the Garden of Eden. That's Isaac. That's Horus. Set, all that, and they intersect and are pinned together at Jesus, and then they separate again.
There you go. I gotta go pee, so I gotta wrap it up. Thank
Yeah.
you. So we'll wrap it up there.
You didn't get to make your blood and soil argument.
I don't have a blood and soil argument.
Thought you did.
No? No. My whole point, my whole thing was asking about if that guy over there is allowed to slap the apple out of my hand.
He's not, because the king says so.